day I received my provisional acceptance into a graduate program. My mom came home carrying 2 shopping bags with the Apple logo on them. She said with a smile, "Since you're both heading to graduate school, I bought each of you a new laptop. It's only fair." My sister eagerly tore open her bag. Inside was the latest MacBook, sleek, lightweight and beautiful. Then mom handed me mine. It was an older model from several years ago with basic specs, and not even a single accessory included. I looked down at the 2 laptops, the difference between them impossible to ignore. Before I could say anything, mom gently ruffled my hair. "Sonny, your field doesn't require that much computing power. This one's durable and it was a great deal. I went to several stores before I found the right one for you, so don't overthink it." She smiled as she spoke, almost hoping I would praise her for all the effort she had made. She did love me. To prove she did not play favorites, she spent a sweltering summer afternoon driving from store to store to find my laptop. However, she had forgotten one thing. My sister and I were in the exact same graduate program. That was when I realized something I should have understood long ago. The love she gave me was always just a little less. From that day on, I stopped hoping it would ever be enough. Without saying a word, I carried the old, heavy laptop back to my room. Behind me, I heard my mother, Judith Hawkins, laugh with satisfaction. "I told you Sunny was the sensible one. She's never fought with the family over anything." In the weeks leading up to graduate school interviews, my older sister, Fiona Charlton, spent every day hanging out with college friends and shopping for new clothes. I locked myself in my room and pulled 3 all-nighters in a row. Professor Wilson from our department had one recommendation slot that guaranteed admission into one of the university's premier research labs. Anyone who earned that spot would also receive early access to the school's most prestigious research projects. I spent 3 full days researching and writing a detailed proposal. After a rigorous review, it was finally approved. Not long afterward, Professor Wilson's lab sent me a confirmation email. Because this project requires a significant time commitment, including some weekends and holidays, a parent or legal guardian must sign the attached consent form acknowledging these arrangements. After dinner, I handed the printed consent form to Mom. She skimmed through it, her brows furrowing slightly. "So you'd be joining the advanced research lab, and you'd have to work weekends and holidays, too. That sounds exhausting. You're about to start graduate school. There's no reason to push yourself this hard." "I don't mind working hard, and this opportunity is incredibly rare. It will help a lot when I apply for a PhD and when I start looking for a job," I answered simply. Mom nodded, folded the form and slipped it into her pocket. "All right, I'll read it carefully tonight and sign it for you tomorrow." I believed her. 3 days later, the thing I received was not my signed consent form. Instead, I saw Fiona's name on the list of students accepted into Professor Wilson's research lab on the department's website. I stared at the screen for 3 long seconds before getting up and pushing open the door to Mom's bedroom. She was sitting on the edge of the bed helping Fiona pick out a dress for graduate school orientation. The 2 of them were chatting and laughing together. Why did Professor Wilson's lab position become Fiona's? I looked straight into Judith's eyes, my voice eerie in its calmness. Mom froze, her hand still holding the dress. Fiona immediately stood up, looking awkward as she avoided my gaze. "Honey, I didn't know. Mom told me Professor Wilson offered me the position himself." "Go try on this dress first," Judith interrupted, patting Fiona on the back. "Check yourself in the mirror in the living room." Fiona hesitated for a moment before leaving. As soon as the door closed, Mom let out a long sigh. She walked over to me, her face filled with what looked like both love and helplessness. "Sonny, don't blame me for making the decision without asking you." She reached for my hand. "I contacted Professor Wilson myself. I had your research proposal replaced with Fiona's. After looking through Fiona's undergraduate record, he reluctantly agreed to accept her." I slowly pulled my hand away and stared at her. That was my spot. I stayed awake for 3 straight nights researching and writing that proposal just to pass the first round. "What gave you the right to hand it to her?" "I know you're upset," Mom said quickly, trying to calm me down, her voice softening into a patient tone. "But Sonny, you've always been the smart one. You've always been exceptional. Even if you don't get into this lab, you'll still have plenty of chances. You'll earn scholarships and have a bright future no matter what. However, Fiona is different." Mom let out a sigh, her brows knitted tightly together. Fiona's grades were average all through college. If she were to apply on her own, she would struggle to get into a good program. If she doesn't get into this lab, she'll probably struggle to find even a decent job after graduation. If she takes another hit, she'll completely fall apart. So the opportunity that I worked myself to the bone for should just be handed over to her. I shot back calmly. "What do you mean handed over?" "I'm protecting her." Mom raised her voice, sounding as though it was the most obvious thing in the world for her younger sister. "What's wrong with helping Fiona? Once your proposal was submitted under her name, Professor Wilson naturally thought more highly of her. With this lab experience on her resume, it'll be much easier for her later. It's different for you. With your ability, you'll earn an even better spot someday. Fiona can't. And we're family. Why do you have to keep score over everything?" I looked at her and suddenly found the whole situation so absurd that it was almost funny. So because I'm more capable, I deserve to lose what's mine. And because she's weaker, she gets to take everything I fought so hard for without feeling guilty. How can you say something so cruel? Looking completely disappointed that I was being so petty enough. "It's already settled. Professor Wilson has submitted the final list. Tonight, I'll make your favorite roast beef to make it up to you." "Okay." Without waiting for an answer, she waved me off impatiently and headed into the kitchen. She smiled as she placed a large slice of roast beef onto my plate. "Go on, try it. I made this especially for you. It was roasted for hours." I picked up my knife and fork. I cut off a piece and took a bite. The first thing I tasted was the rich flavor of rosemary, Fiona's favorite herb. "Well, is it good?" Mom asked expectantly. "It is." I swallowed the bite and cut off another piece. I simply sat there in silence. I did not flip the table, and I did not ask why she had cooked it to Fiona's taste instead of mine. Bite by bite, I finished the entire plate of roast beef. There was only a dull ache spreading through my chest. When I finished the last bite, I set down my utensils, quietly rose from the table, and headed to the bathroom to shower. Half an hour later, I was drying my hair. As I pushed open my bedroom door, my footsteps stopped cold. Fiona was sitting at my desk with her back to me, holding a flash drive in one hand and frantically working on my computer. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice. "I see." Fiona jumped so hard that her whole body shook. She spun around, her face turning ghostly pale as she tried to yank out the flash drive. However, I was already beside her, grabbing her wrist before she could. A progress bar was moving across the screen. Do you even understand what you're looking at? I demanded. You got Professor Wilson's lab position, but you can't even understand the research materials he sent you, can you? So while I was taking a shower, you sneaked in here to steal the core notes I spent 3 sleepless nights putting together. Embarrassment instantly turned into anger, and Fiona struggled to pull free. What do you mean steal? Mom said this project belongs to me now. If you won't let me see it, how am I supposed to join the graduate research team when school starts? Are you trying to ruin me? Those are my notes. Get out. I shoved her away and reached for my computer. Her eyes went red with panic as she lunged for the keyboard. Give it to me. You just want to watch me embarrass myself, don't you? She stumbled, her hand flailing wildly through the air. The glass of water on my desk toppled over, spilling straight across my keyboard. A sharp electrical crackle echoed through the room. The screen flickered twice before going completely black, leaving me frozen where I stood. What's going on? Why are you two making so much noise this late at night? Hearing the commotion, Mom rushed into the room. The moment Fiona saw her, her eyes instantly filled with tears. She burst into sobs and immediately accused me. Mom, I just wanted to learn from Sunny's way of thinking. I was scared I wouldn't be able to keep up when school starts, and I didn't want to disappoint you. But instead of helping me, Sunny kept treating me like the enemy. She even pushed me. I accidentally knocked over the water, and her computer got ruined. Mom looked at the dead computer, then at Fiona's tear-streaked face. Her expression immediately darkened. She did not scold Fiona for sneaking into my room and stealing my work. She did not ask about the months of effort that had just been destroyed. Instead, she turned to me with obvious irritation. Sunny, Fiona is about to start graduate school under Professor Wilson. What's wrong with her looking at your notes? That research proposal belongs to Fiona now. Why won't you hand it over? She's your sister, not your enemy. We're family. Family is supposed to help each other, not guard against each other. Never imagined you'd be so cold-hearted. She destroyed all my research. My whole body shook with anger. It's just an old laptop. Mom raised her voice, drowning mine out. So what if the files are gone? They're still in your head, aren't they? You're so smart. Just write them all over again. What did you just say? My voice trembled. Mom replied without the slightest guilt. You're going to rewrite that entire research proposal from memory tonight. Think of it as a back-to-school gift for your sister. If she can't keep up during her first week, if she gets discouraged or falls into depression because she struggles with the research team, I'll cut off your living expenses. I looked at the two of them. Fiona stood behind Mom, unable to hide the smug satisfaction in her eyes. Mom stood there as though she were completely justified, demanding that I hand over everything I had fought so hard to earn. An icy chill crept up my spine. Then, all at once, my heartbeat steadied. There was no anger, no heartbreak. Okay. My voice was dead calm. Mom blinked, clearly surprised that I had agreed so easily. That's more like it. I knew you'd be the reasonable one. Stop arguing with your sister all the time. Get started. Just don't stay up too late. The door closed behind them. Looking at my ruined computer, I did not shed a single tear. Instead, I picked up my phone and opened an email that had been sitting quietly in my inbox for weeks, an official admission letter from one of the top universities on the other side of the world, complete with a full scholarship covering all tuition and living expenses. Until now, I had still been hesitating, unsure if my savings would be enough to start over alone abroad. But as I looked at the dead laptop, I did not hesitate for even a second. I tapped accept offer, logged into my university's portal, and submitted my request to withdraw from the graduate program. Next, I pulled a small suitcase from my closet, and quietly began packing the few things that truly belonged to me. For the next 2 days, I deliberately stayed out of Mom's and Fiona's way. Finally, the day before orientation arrived, I went back to my room to retrieve the one thing that mattered most, the bank card hidden beneath the false bottom of my desk drawer. It held every scholarship I had earned over the years, along with the money I had saved working fast food jobs. It was my tuition, my living expenses, my only way out. However, when I pulled open the drawer, it was empty. Panic surged through me as I yanked open every drawer and searched every corner of the room. The bank card was gone. I rushed into the living room where Mom was helping Fiona pack brand new clothes, and a luxury camera into 2 expensive suitcases. Where's my bank card? I stared at her without even looking up. Mom continued packing. Oh, that card. I took your ID to the bank yesterday and transferred all the money out of the account. That was my education fund. It was supposed to pay for my future. Enough. Stop bringing up your father. Mom cut me off. Fiona can't show up to Professor Wilson's lab carrying cheap things. These are necessary expenses. I'll pay you back when we have money. What gave you the right to touch my education fund? I finally lost control, my voice shaking with rage. Because I'm your mother. Mom exploded too. She shot to her feet and pointed a finger at me. Don't I have the right? You can apply for loans or scholarships once school starts. Fiona can't handle that kind of hardship. She took my spot, destroyed my work, and now cut off my last lifeline. I stopped arguing. My eyes locked on Mom's open handbag on the couch. My ID and the few $100s I had left were inside. I rushed over and grabbed the bag, digging through it. Have you lost your mind? Mom screamed and lunged at me, clamping both hands around my arm. Give me my ID. Give me my money back, I shouted. You're really going to fight me over this little bit of money? I can't believe you've become like this. Mom glared at me. The money had never been what she could not accept. What she could not accept was that for the first time in my life, I had refused to obey her. Blazing with anger, she shoved me with all her strength. Get out of my way. I lost my balance and crashed backward. A sickening crack echoed as my lower back slammed against the sharp marble edge of the coffee table. A jolt of excruciating pain shot through my spine, bringing cold sweat and violent dry heaving. A car horn honked outside. Mom, hurry, we'll be late for Professor Wilson, Fiona called sweetly from downstairs. Mom looked down at me, trembling in agony. Panic flickered across her face for a split second before curdling into cold annoyance. She pulled my ID from her bag and casually tossed it onto the floor. Stop acting so fragile. Put some ice on it. I'm taking Fiona to school. When I get back tonight, we're having a talk about your attitude. The front door slammed shut. 10 minutes later, I dragged myself up. Using the table for leverage, I picked up my ID, grabbed my ruined laptop, and set it on the dining table over an itemized ledger detailing every dollar she had spent on me since high school. On the final page were 2 lines. I will repay every cent. With interest. From this day forward, we owe each other nothing. The moment I wrote those words, something inside me loosened. I took a picture of the ledger with my phone, uploaded copies of every scholarship record, bank statement, tuition receipt, and award letter to a private cloud account, then sent everything to my personal email. I wasn't leaving anything behind that they could rewrite. Then I opened my phone and called the bank. Hello. I'd like to report unauthorized transfers from my account. The representative asked me a series of security questions. When I explained that my mother had used my identification to access the account without my permission, her tone immediately became serious. Ma'am, we'll need to freeze the account and investigate the transfer. Do it. My voice didn't shake. By the time I ended the call, my back was still screaming with pain. I couldn't stand straight, but I could still walk. That was enough. I booked a rideshare to an urgent care clinic and carried my broken laptop under one arm. At the clinic, the doctor examined my back and ordered x-rays. There's a significant contusion around your lower spine, she said. You're lucky you didn't fracture anything. You need to rest for several days. I almost laughed. Several days? I had an international flight in 36 hours. I'll manage. Before leaving, I requested copies of every medical record. Then I called the university that had offered me the scholarship. A woman from the graduate admissions office answered. Good afternoon. How can I help you? My name is Sunny Hawkins. I accepted the full scholarship 2 days ago. I need to confirm that my enrollment is still active. Absolutely. We have everything ready for you. Your student housing is reserved, your stipend begins next month, and your research supervisor has already reviewed your proposal. I closed my eyes. My proposal. The original one. The one Fiona had stolen. Can I ask you something? Of course. If someone else submitted a proposal based on work that belongs to me, would that affect my admission? There was a pause. Not unless you submitted that work to us as someone else's. I didn't. Then you're fine. Actually, your supervisor was very impressed with your research portfolio. I smiled for the first time that day. Thank you. When the call ended, I immediately opened my email. There was another message waiting. Professor Wilson. My stomach tightened. I opened it. Sunny, I understand you've withdrawn from the program. I won't pretend I'm not disappointed. Your research proposal was the strongest submission I reviewed this year. However, there's something you should know. I did not authorize the transfer of your project to Fiona Charlton. I was told by your mother that you had voluntarily given your project to your sister. I only agreed to let Fiona join the lab, because I believed you had chosen to withdraw. If that isn't true, contact me immediately. I stared at the screen. So Mom had lied to him too. I forwarded him every document I had. Then I added one sentence. Professor, I would appreciate it if you preserved all records relating to my original submission, and the subsequent changes to my project. His reply came less than 5 minutes later. I will. I put my phone down. Then I laughed. Not because anything was funny, because suddenly the entire situation made perfect sense. Mom hadn't merely favored Fiona. She had spent years convincing me that being capable meant I could survive anything. That meant my achievements were disposable. My time was disposable. My money was disposable. Even my future was apparently family property. But she had made one mistake. She had taught me to become independent. And now she was going to discover exactly how independent I'd become. That evening, Mom returned home expecting to find me hunched over my desk rewriting 3 nights of research from memory. Instead, she found my bedroom almost empty. My clothes were gone. My books were gone. My passport was gone. My important documents were gone. Only the old MacBook remained on the desk. Fiona followed her upstairs. Where's Sunny? Mom looked around. I don't know. She opened my closet. Empty. Her expression changed. She rushed to the bathroom. Empty. Then she saw the envelope sitting on my desk. Her name was written across the front. She tore it open. Inside was the itemized ledger. Every dollar. Every expense. Every scholarship payment. Every transfer. And beneath it was a photocopy of my bank statement, showing the unauthorized withdrawal. Fiona leaned over her shoulder. What is that? Mom's face went white. Then her phone rang. She answered. Hello. The bank representative spoke. Mrs. Hawkins, we're calling regarding the disputed transfer from Sunny Hawkins's account. Mom froze. What disputed transfer? The account holder has reported the transaction as unauthorized. We've placed a hold on the transferred funds pending investigation. Mom's fingers tightened around the phone. That's impossible. I'm her mother. I'm afraid that doesn't give you authorization to withdraw funds from an account solely belonging to your daughter. Mom hung up. Fiona stared at her. Mom, it's fine. But her voice had lost its confidence. Then another notification appeared on her phone. An email from Professor Wilson. Subject. Immediate clarification required regarding research submission. Mom opened it. Her face became even paler. Professor Wilson wanted an explanation for why Sunny's original proposal had been altered, and why Fiona had been presented as its author. Fiona grabbed the phone. What did he say? Mom snatched it away. Nothing. Mom, nothing. For the first time, Fiona looked frightened. Then she whispered, Where's Sunny? Mom didn't answer. Because she had just noticed something else. My passport wasn't in my room. Neither was my suitcase. The next morning, I arrived at the airport with a medical brace around my waist and one suitcase. I had less money than I should have had. My laptop was destroyed. My back hurt every time I moved. And I had just walked away from everything I'd known. Yet when I looked through the airport window at the plane waiting on the runway, I felt lighter than I had in years. My phone vibrated. Mom calling. I declined it. It rang again. Declined. Again. Declined. Then Fiona called. I answered. What? Her voice was trembling. Sunny, where are you? At the airport. Silence. You're actually leaving? Yes. But graduate school starts tomorrow. Not for me. You can't just abandon us. I laughed softly. Interesting. What? You're worried about abandonment now? Fiona went quiet. I continued. You took my research position. Mom handled that. You used my research. Mom said, you destroyed my computer. I didn't mean to. You took my money. That was Mom. I smiled. Exactly. She stopped speaking. I looked down at my boarding pass. Fiona, you spent years letting Mom explain why you deserved everything I worked for. My voice remained calm. Now you're going to learn what happens when there is nothing left for her to give you. Sonny, please. Good luck with Professor Wilson. I ended the call. Then I blocked her number. My mother called again. I blocked hers too. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed with an email. Professor Wilson. Sonny, I reviewed the evidence you sent. I have suspended Fiona's placement pending an academic integrity investigation. Your original research submission remains archived under your name. If you ever reconsider leaving this university, my recommendation will still stand. I read it twice. Then I deleted nothing. I saved everything. Because I knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of the part where my family would finally have to live without me carrying them. And for the first time, that didn't scare me. The boarding announcement sounded overhead. I picked up my suitcase. Then I walked toward the gate. Behind me was the family that had spent my entire life telling me I was strong enough to survive being loved less. Ahead of me was a university thousands of miles away, a full scholarship, a research career, a life that belonged entirely to me. I didn't look back. Epilogue. 2 years later, I stood in front of a packed auditorium and accepted my doctoral fellowship. The applause seemed to go on forever. My research had been published in 2 major journals. I'd been invited to present at conferences across 3 countries, and the professor who had once recommended me for Wilson's lab was now one of the people writing letters for my PhD application. I had built a life so different from the one I'd left behind that sometimes the old memories felt like they belonged to someone else. Then after the ceremony, I saw a familiar name on my phone. Judith Hawkins. I hadn't spoken to my mother since the day I left. I almost deleted the message. Instead, I opened it. Sonny, please call me. Fiona's situation has become serious. I stared at the screen. Apparently, Fiona's placement had been permanently revoked after the academic integrity investigation confirmed that my research had been submitted under her name. She had tried applying to other programs, but without the research experience she'd expected to inherit, her applications went nowhere. Mom had spent the following year paying off debts she'd accumulated trying to support Fiona's lifestyle. Then she'd discovered something neither of them expected. The bank investigation had recovered part of my stolen education fund. The rest became the subject of a civil claim. Mom eventually had to repay every cent she'd taken, with interest, exactly as I'd written in my ledger. I never pursued her for anything beyond what legally belonged to me. I didn't need to. The consequences were already doing their job. Fiona eventually moved back home. The sister who had once walked into my bedroom wearing expensive clothes and demanded access to my research now worked an ordinary office job and complained constantly about how unfair life was. Mom still defended her. Some things never changed. But there was one thing that did. I no longer participated. I never returned home to fix their problems. I never sent money. I never answered late-night calls asking for favors. I never allowed guilt to turn into obedience again. I looked at my mother's message one final time. Then I typed my response. I'm glad you're both safe. I won't be coming back. I hope you build a good life, but I need you to understand that I'm no longer responsible for either of you. I sent it. Then I blocked the number. My phone immediately became quiet. I slipped it into my pocket and turned around. My research supervisor was waiting for me outside the auditorium. Ready to celebrate? I smiled. Absolutely. We walked toward the reception together. That evening, I stood on the balcony of my apartment overlooking a city I had once been terrified to move to. 3 years ago, I had left home with one suitcase, a broken laptop, a painful back, and barely enough money to feel safe. Now I had my own apartment, my own research team, a fellowship, savings I'd earned myself, and people around me who respected my work without asking what they could take from it. My old laptop had been replaced within my first week abroad. I had kept the broken one though. It sat inside a box in my closet. Not because I miss my family, because it reminded me of the exact moment I stopped begging to be treated fairly. My mother had always told me I was the strong one. She had meant it as an excuse to give Fiona more. She never realized that one day, being strong would mean walking away from her. I looked out at the lights below and smiled. I hadn't lost my family. I had lost the illusion that I needed them. And that turned out to be the best thing they had ever given me.